Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. What I'd like to do this morning is show you a method of finding cardinal direction using your own shadow that I have been working on for the last couple months to try to make sure that it works different times of the day and things like that. And if you watch my videos, you know that I've kind of been obsessed over the last couple years with shadow type navigation. And I believe that navigation by shadows has been used since the beginning of time probably, but we know that the Vikings used shadow type navigation to navigate over distance and across open seas. We don't know exactly how they did it because they never really wrote it down. But we have some archaeological evidence and some writings that were made some years later that give us indications, and there's been lots and lots of modern studies done on this type navigation. But I want to show you a real simple method today that you can use your own body to be able to determine the cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west. And actually you'll be able to, once you practice this, navigate over distance at least in a semi-straight line and avoid lots and lots of lateral drift in the process. And I think that's the key to this. And it also gives you a verifier if for some reason you think your compass is wrong. There's been a lot of people that have been lost, and it was because they didn't trust their compass. They didn't believe that it was showing them proper direction, and they just quit paying attention to it, and they become more lost than they already are. So you can use this as a verifying method to say, okay, yeah, my compass is working fine, I can trust it and move on. Obviously you want to carry some type of a proper navigation device, but in the essence of primitive skills, understanding how to recreate all of these things to include navigation devices is important. Okay, so first let's talk about a method of understanding cardinal direction very quickly on the fly. And the only thing we really need to understand to make this happen is we need to understand that the sun moves across the sky, or the earth rotates, which makes the sun appear to move across the sky at about 15 degrees every hour. We also need to understand that we can count hands from the horizon up to the sun or down to determine how many hours the sun has been up or how many hours until the sun goes down. And then we equate that to 1 hour equals 15 degrees for simple math. And then we're going to use our feet to make adjustments, because we can tell by looking at our feet whether we have our feet at a 90 or a 45, or whether we have our feet together. And I'll explain more about that to you in just a second. All right, so first things first, we know that the sun rises in the east and we know that the sun sets in the west. So we know in the morning that sun is going to be in the eastern sky. So we have an eastern direction to start with, an easterly direction. And now we're going to count hands up or down from the horizon line or to the horizon line to the sun to give us that calculation of how many hours the sun's been up. And remember that you're actually talking about the horizon line, not a hilltop or a line of trees. So when I look at that count down from below the sun, I go 1, 2, and I'm at 2 hours to the horizon line. So 2 hours equates to 30 degrees at 15 degrees per hour. If you follow that, we're ready to go to the next step. Okay, for the next step in the equation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my body sideways to the sun, and I'm going to point my hand up at the sun and make sure that the shadow beside me on the ground is even when I hold my hand out, and it's not in front or in back of me. I want that shadow dead in line with me. What I'm doing is I'm creating an east-west line, and I'm going to compensate that east-west line by moving my body to obtain a better north-south line. Now, if I look down at my feet and I hold my feet together, I can now adjust my feet to get that angle differential of 30 degrees. So let me get the camera set up on my feet and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so once I have put myself in line with the sun, just like this, and I look at my shadow on the ground and see where it's at, I can look down at my feet and realize that this is 90 degrees, this is 45 degrees, and a little bit less than that would be 30 degrees, guesstimating. And now I'm going to take this foot and move it to this foot so I'm facing in a forward direction. And now I'm saying by adjusting my angle 30 degrees from that east-west line, I now have a good north-south line. And I would get my compass out while I'm practicing this method to verify that. Okay, so what we're going to try to do now is we're going to try to get this on camera if we can, only having the one camera. You can see my shadow here, and I'm now have the sun here, and my shadow is directly off to this side. You can see it on the ground, I believe, in the camera. And I have my feet together. Once I verify that that's all correct, and I know I'm in line, now I'm going to move this foot first to 45 because I'm looking for 30, and then to 30, and then put my feet together. I'm saying now that this is my north-south line. If I get my compass out and open it up, I have it already turned to north. So I'm going to set it on the ground right here where my feet are facing, just like this, and I'm going to try to get the camera zoomed in on that for you. Hopefully you can see that. And what you've got here is this black arrow is the arrow that's on your clinometer. Here is your compass arrow, and it's facing about 2 degrees off of dead north and still within the doghouse. So we've given ourselves now a very, very accurate north direction, and obviously we can figure out east, west, and south from that. Okay, that's step one of our shadow equation. We can verify a north, south, east, west line fairly close just by looking at the sun, judging how many hours the sun's been up or how many hours till it goes down, adjusting our feet by simple angles to adjust our east-west line to the proper location, which will make the north-south line fall into place. And you can really do that in about 15 seconds on the fly. So that would tell you that if I'm walking over distance and I'm leapfrogging, in other words, I take a reading, let's say I want to go in a northern direction, eastern direction, a western direction, or even some form of that in 45, like southwest, northeast, I can make my adjustments, figure out where my cardinal directions are. And if I know this is north, straight in front of me, and I want to travel northwest, well, then I can just take another 45 off of that, put my feet together, and I'm going to be facing northwest. And I can then find something in my line of sight that I'm not going to lose sight of until I get to it, so that I can walk a straight line, walk to that object, and do the process again. Take another reading. Go ahead and count hands again to see if the sun's moved or not. Again, you're talking about 15 degrees an hour, so you've got about a 15-degree differential that you could be off here. But 15 degrees over distance and readjusting every time you stop at a leapfrogging point is going to be a lot better than just haphazardly walking and hoping you can walk a straight line, because without a compass, you're not going to be able to do it unless you can see the object you're walking to and not lose sight of that object. And that's the purpose of leapfrogging with a compass and taking multiple bearings or taking multiple readings on objects along the same travel bearing. And it's the same thing that you're doing here. If you know you want to travel northwest, you would just figure out what direction northwest is at every single leapfrog point and keep going in that straight line. So that tells you a very simplistic way of doing this. On the part 2 of this video, we're going to transfer this information to a shadow board to make it a little bit more accurate even. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.